Doesn't that look delicious? Let's make it. A while back, I made my own chocolate from cacao pods and I put them in these dino molds and they are just so adorable. I mean, look. Aww. Unfortunately for these dinos, I was saving them for a special recipe, which is today, so they'll be experiencing the end of life again when I melt them. We've gone over the first ingredient, but for the rest of the ingredients, I've got butter, katafi, and the filling flavor of choice. I've decided to go with cookie butter because I love cookie butter and I felt like pistachio was just way too overused. The first part of the recipe is prepping the katafi. I went ahead and opened it up. I did plan on just shredding it by hand because that's usually what I do, but for some reason your girl was a little weak today. Okay, reality is I kind of just took it out of the freezer. I know you're supposed to thaw it, but yeah, this is me attempting to do it and it was so humiliating. So I went ahead and brought out the cutting board and I just started to chop it. I mean, even with the knife I was struggling, but the aim of the game is to just chop it really finely. That way they're in a lot smaller pieces and you're not choking on them as you eat the chocolate bar. So I did just get about a cup and a half of it because I was only making one chocolate bar, so I didn't want to make too much of it. For the rest of the katafi, it is going straight into the freezer because Ramadan is somehow always around the corner and you always somehow need this stuff, so I'm just prepping well in advance. After the ridiculous amount of time it took me to give this katafi a haircut, it is time to take it and the butter to the stove. I eyeball all of my measurements, even though I probably shouldn't, but I melted about a tablespoon of butter and then added in the chopped katafi and cooked it on medium heat until it turned golden brown. Now back to the prep area. Now, I decided today was the day I'd be testing out my flower coasters that I crocheted from yarn, and I was very paranoid as to whether or not they would work and whether they were thick enough, but thankfully the counter wasn't melted. So I was like, you know what, that's good enough for me. Let's continue on with the recipe. I went ahead and added 3 scoops of the cookie butter. This cookie butter was dry, so it took me forever to mix everything together, but thankfully with the heat, eventually it started to work out, and this was when I was like, ooh, it's been sitting here a long time. Let me check that counter again. The counter was totally fine, but that pot holder definitely has taken the beating. After an arm workout, the katafi is all set, and it's time to move on to the chocolate, and it's time for the dinos to be melted. I went ahead and just put them all into a cup and melted them in the microwave. One thing to note is that because this was homemade chocolate, it's a little bit grainy, so I was worried it was going to affect the texture, but it was actually totally fine and melted really, really well. Now to assemble the chocolate bar, I went ahead and added the chocolate into the bunny mold. I will say a lot of these videos had really thick chocolate, and the sample one that I'll taste test later also did, so my goal was to avoid that. I also want to address my choice of mold. Yes, these are bunny ice cream molds, and during COVID I was making a bunch of boba ice cream bars, and that's why I got these. They were the cheapest ones that I could find, and I did not feel like buying another mold just for this one recipe. To get a thin chocolate, it was kind of like a science. I had to add small amounts of chocolate, but also make sure everything was covered so the katafi didn't come out. But once it was complete, I chilled it in the freezer for 10 minutes, and this is what that is looking like. I was a bit paranoid that the chocolate was too thin, so I held it up to my window. You can also hold it up to a bright light to just see through it and see where the chocolate was thinner. Once I established that the chocolate was all good, I went ahead and added the katafi in, and I made sure to press really hard because I am obsessed with crunch, and I wanted to pack in as much crunch as possible. But I was still gentle, and I made sure that I did it without breaking the chocolate because that would have been a disaster. If you thought I had self-restraint and wasn't going to eat until the end, you were absolutely wrong. I munched on this stuff so much because I actually had a lot extra. I probably could have made a whole nother chocolate bar. And after my little snack break, I went back to compacting the katafi, and once that was all complete, I went in with the chocolate. I was definitely at the point of the project where I was like, I will do anything to be done with this, so I didn't reheat the chocolate, which is why it's a little bit thicker, but I think it worked in my favor because it was still a very thin layer, but it was not going to spill everywhere and it was easy to just maneuver around like peanut butter. One thing I wish I had done was to freeze it after the katafi stage because it was starting to come up with the chocolate and it took me a while to just get everything pressed in and make sure none of the katafi was sticking through. I tried my best to get the back as smooth as possible, but I think with how thick it was and the graininess of the chocolate, it wasn't going to get better than this, so I went ahead and chucked it into the freezer for another 10 minutes, and with that, all of the hard work is complete, and all that's left is to demold it, which I did very slowly and carefully because the last thing I needed was to break it. Isn't it so cute? Yeah, past and present me don't think so.
I don't remember the bunny looking this weird.
It's kind of giving... Moving past the fact that its creepy dark eyes stared straight into my soul, let's crack her open, and of course I struggled
Okay,
again.
it's not that bad.
I was being a little harsh on myself. It's actually really
So
good.
much thinner. Wait. Oh my gosh, so much.
Did you really think that the competitive harsh critic in me would not save a piece of this chocolate in the freezer to compare when she made it? Yeah, no. But thankfully she was pleased. Now for the crunch. Okay, so the mic definitely failed me on that one, but I can assure you it was a great crunch. It was top tier. It was one of the crunchiest crunches I have ever crunched. I think you get the point, but I had to compare to the other one.
Ow.
Listen, that chocolate is thick, but eventually I made it through. And after digesting, of course I had my thoughts.
Wait. They toasted it for longer. I can taste it's kind of burnt. Okay. That one is super sweet. But I like the toastiness. I should have toasted this more. But that crunch, oh.
I think the overall winner is mine because it had the darker chocolate and a better overall crunch. You know when you're done building something or making something and you look over and you see the mess you have to clean up? Yeah, that's what this felt like. This chocolate was really hard to make and it's really, really good, so I decided to put it back into the dyno mold so that it didn't go to waste.
Does this look appetizing anymore?
This is also the part of the project when I start to get a little delusional and start talking to the camera, but in reality, I guess myself. Take your guesses as to how many of these dinos I filled because I was actually shocked that I made this many of them and that there were that many left. And during this delusion, I also realized there was no point in putting these into molds because I'm not actually eating this to consume chocolate. I'm kind of saving it for the next recipe. I was thinking maybe a mug cake or a souffle. I'm not really sure, but you should let me know what I should do with it. At this point, I was so fed up with this project that I didn't even do like a cute outro. I was just like, goodbye.